Lesson 2 in Unit 2 is titled Introducing Proportional Relationships with Tables. Please make sure you title your notes and you can check Canvas to see what page you should be on. Your goals today are to be able to use a table to reason about two quantities that are in a proportional relationship and also to understand the terms proportional relationship and constant of proportionality. Today's lesson will require you to copy several tables in your math notebook. So let's solve problems that involve proportional relationships using tables. Your warm-up today is called Paper Towels by the Case. So here's a table that shows how many rolls of paper towels a store receives when they order different numbers of cases. So in this notice and wonder, please pause the video and come up with one thing you notice and one thing you wonder about the table. So some things to notice. To go from one row to another, you can multiply both columns by the same number. And you see that in the last two rows. From 5 to 10, we're multiplying by 2. And also from 60 to 120, we multiply by 2. You might also notice that to find the number of rolls, you're going to multiply the number of cases by 12. So to get from the left side of the table to the right side of the table, we multiply by 12. You might also notice that there are 12 rolls in a case. Some things you might wonder, maybe how much does a case of paper towels cost? How many paper towels are on a roll? And the question that gets asked every year, the wonder that gets mentioned every year is, why on earth would you need 120 rolls of paper towels? I don't know, maybe you're a big business with lots of bathrooms, or you're a kitchen, a restaurant, who knows. Typically, if you're ordering things like this by the case, you're some sort of business. First activity is called Feeding a Crowd. So we kind of just like to talk. Have you ever cooked rice? A lot of us have. What kinds of things do you need to cook rice? So what are the steps? Think about the steps maybe to cooking rice. Typically it requires heat, a pan, some sort of oil or butter, and oftentimes water. What about a spring roll? Do you know what a spring roll is? So this is like an egg roll. They use some sort of either rice paper to kind of roll up the ingredients in, and then it's also fried in a pan. There's an example of a spring roll or an egg roll. So for the activity today, I'm going to put a table on the screen. One's going to be about rice, the first one, and then the second table is going to be about spring rolls. So here we go. First, I would like you to pause the video, copy this table into your notebook, and then you are answering question 1A and question 1B by filling in the missing parts of the table. So again, pause the video here, and once you have the table filled out, then you can resume the video. So the recipe says that 2 cups of dry rice will serve 6 people. That means that 3 cups of dry rice will serve 9 people. 10 cups of dry rice will serve 30 people. And if you need to serve 45 people, you will need 15 cups of dry rice. So you can see here, how do we get from the left side of the table to the right side of the table? We are multiplying by 3. So there's that relationship from cups of rice to number of people. You can also see relationships vertically down the table. For example, 3 times 5 is 15. So that also holds true that 9 times 5 is 45. The second table now is about the spring rolls and people. So again, pause this video here. Get the table copied into your math notebook and fill in the missing parts of the table. So if 6 spring rolls serve 3 people, that means that 30 spring rolls will serve 15 people, and 40 spring rolls will serve 20 people, and if you have 28 people, you will need 56 spring rolls. Similar to when we're working with scale factor, I ask students, how do we get from the left side to the right side? And everyone wants to say divide by 2. That's true in the sense of how you're actually calculating those numbers. You're welcome to use division, but typically, again, when we work from the left side of the table to the right side of the table, we want to talk about multiplication. So instead of saying divide by 2, we're multiplying by a half. So I've got some things for you to write down in your math notebook. The proportional relationship is when two quantities are always in the same ratio. So if we go back to this table, 3 over 6, that's a half. 15 over 30, that's a half. 20 over 40, that's a half. 28 over 56, those are all 1/2. So those quantities are always in the same ratio. The relationship between the number of cups of rice and the number of people is a proportional relationship. Why? Because the number of cups of rice is proportional to the number of people. And the same is true about the previous example with the spring rolls and people. So the relationship between the number of spring rolls and the number of people is a proportional relationship because the number of spring rolls is proportional to the number of people. Now this diagram you see below was the cups of rice and people. So remember that 1 cup of rice would feed 3 people. And so we see that there in the diagram. You also can see here that 2 cups of rice would feed 6 people. And we could continue by drawing this diagram and adding 1 cup of rice each time and 3 more people. The last activity is called making bread dough. So we have a bakery that uses 8 tablespoons of honey for every 10 cups of flour to make bread dough. Some days they bake bigger batches and some days they make smaller batches, but they always use the same ratio of honey to flour. So we're going to work on one more table and complete the table while we answer the questions. So in a bakery, you know, they're probably busier on the weekend, busier on a Saturday than maybe they are on a Monday or Tuesday. So that might explain why some days they're making bigger batches and some days they're making smaller batches. So here is the table. Again, please pause the video so that you can copy the table down in your math notebook and then see how much of this table you can fill out. So in part of this table, what makes this table a little more difficult, it's harder to see what do I multiply 8 by to get 10. It doesn't stick out, it's not as obvious as it was in the other tables. Some students can quickly fill in that very last row. They recognize that 10 times 2 is 20, so 8 times 2 is 16. We can kind of quickly see, okay, if we've got 20 cups of flour, then we would have 16 tablespoons of honey. That's that third question. But then the question is, how do we fill out the second 2 rows? And maybe you've got some answers here. But one thing you can do is take 10 and divide it by 8. 10 divided by 8 is 1.25. So that tells me that I'm multiplying the left side of the table by 1.25 to get the right side of the table. 20 times 1.25 is 25, and 13 times 1.25 is 16.25. So again, this one's a little trickier just because we don't have a nice easy number to see how to multiply the left side to get the right side, but we've got to keep it in a proportional relationship. These quantities have to be proportional. So whatever I multiply 8 by to get 10, I have to make sure that I do that all the way down the table. So the cups of flour that are required for 20 tablespoons is 25, and the cups of flour required for 13 tablespoons is 16 and a fourth, or 16.25. Another definition today to copy down is constant of proportionality. This is a constant ratio or unit rate in any proportional relationship. Unit rate is really important, and it can always be found by finding out how much of the second quantity per 1 of the first quantity. And when we say second and first, The second quantity would be the right side of the table, and the first quantity is going to be the left side of the table. So for example, in the bread dough activity, the constant of proportionality is 1.25. That's the number we multiplied the left side by to get the right side. What this means is that you can multiply any amount of honey by 1.25 to find the correct amount of flour that's needed. For every 1.25 cups of flour, there's 1 tablespoon of honey. Okay, please make sure that you're checking Canvas to see what the homework assignment is, as it could be different for the different classes, and reach out if you have any questions.